Greetings and welcome to Prison News Podcast. It seems like this is the kind of year where a lot of inmates are reaching out and getting college degrees. A lot of resources are available. Let's go ahead and read about one. This is from the Interpreter magazine. Guy talks about how he first drove through a gate and he saw inmates walking to the yard and it hit him. He's heading to prison. But he was traveling with a bunch of entrepreneurs, CEOs, and investors. Now, they were at the Richard J. Donovan prison down there in San Diego. It was like a one-day Shark Tank-like training where they go in, they had some inmates in there and see how they're doing. And so investor Neil reported that he sees some potential there. And they're going to have a little bit of a leadership development mentoring session, and we'll see how that goes. It's called startup incubation right now for the inmates. Now, speaking of an inmate who's going to be an inmate, Hurricane Irma delayed ex-developer's prison report date. Now, whenever you see a title like that as ex-developer, like if you were referred to as an ex-cab driver, or there's usually something going on there, and as you'll see, that's the case here. Now, a former Maine real estate developer convicted of making tens of thousands of dollars in illegal campaign donations, by the way, those were to benefit Mitt Romney at the time, he's been ordered to report to the federal prison. He was supposed to go in the first part of August, but U.S. District Judge D. Brock Hornby, he granted a motion to delay Liberty's report date to enable Mr. Liberty to secure his home and protect his family. Now, the motion cited the fact that Florida Governor Rick Scott had declared a state of emergency. So he was supposed to go in the first part of August, and he doesn't have to go till the middle part of September. Now, Liberty was once called the Donald Trump with a Maine accent. He was sentenced to 4 months at this point in order to pay a $100,000 fine. He waived the indictment and went ahead and took his shot, and that's the end of the court documents. Next up, the University of Iowa is also offering pilot certificates this semester for inmates to come on down there and get their, it's not truly a degree. It's a thing called to get a different understanding of the prison system. And they have a woman named Cohen who she takes a choir of members down there. They sing the songs, and they have what they call long-term goals where the inmates hear it. And then they have a thing to speed it along called a prison education working group. And this is to help make speakers out of them. And then they said it can be used. They say the actual degree these inmates get, it says right here, it doesn't hold any credit, but it can have value during parole hearings. Now, one of these guys is a member of the Harvard Business School, and he's scheduled to lead a little class out there called Learning Through Discussion, where you don't really learn, you just have a talk about it. Another guy's teaching a class called Shakespeare Behind Bars, and that gets him going. Well, folks, this is a legal news thing. It can go either way. There's a law kind of a thing that says California's passing this thing or trying to pass it, where you have to print a warning on coffee to tell people this coffee could be very dangerous to them. And people at this point, they cannot obtain documents about this litigation, but they say it's right around the corner. And the law is say there's no exemption to the state notification law is warranted. They just can't quite get this called a chemical byproduct. I've never heard of anything about coffee having a chemical byproduct. Now, I've heard of cigarettes having some real problems that way, but not coffee. Well, as we continue to look at this thing, we see that the lawyers are kind of circling, and they have a thing called CERT, Council for Education and Research on Toxics, CERT. And many of the defendants were coffee company defendants, as you might imagine. And it's kind of back down to just wanting them to include the level of carcinogens. And one of these names is called arcletamide. And I've never heard of that in coffee. So we'll see how that takes place. Folks, this is going to be the end of it. I want to thank you for stopping by here, Prison News. This is what we're using right now. It's called the podcast. Things are changing just a little bit. This winter, we're going to keep an eye on these inmates getting these college degrees, see how that does for them. Keep an eye on guys getting special sentencing guidelines. And more important, we're going to start looking at about certain political bents that are going to funnel more money into the prison system and make it easier for the privatization of prisons so you can use it for like a money-making, like a machine, as opposed to what the states are told to do, which is to warehouse the inmate and have him serve his sentence as a primary focus. It'll be cost savings and things like that it will be focused into. Peace to all of you. Lord bless, and bye for now.